Our guest today is none other than Miss Devina Mehra, founder and CMD at First Global. Devina has been in the markets for the last 3 decades or so and has navigated them beautifully, whether it's volatile times, whether it's bearish times or bullish times. She's made a lot of money for her unit holders. Namaste Devina ji. Again, a very warm welcome on Market Guru. At this point of time, the tailwinds in the market are fairly substantial, yet we refuse to move on the long side. What do you think is ailing sentiment on Dalal Street at this moment?
Namaste, Shail, to you and to the viewers also. I don't think, of course, last 1 year we've just been treading water. We went down, we came up, and I was just looking at some of my podcasts because my book came out end of January and I did some podcasts in February. And in all of them, I'm saying that if you were waiting for a correction to invest, have you invested? And to remind the viewers, the February end Nifty was, I think, 22,100. So we have come some way from there. Significantly so. And my advice has been the same, that you cannot predict markets for 6 months, or I would say even for 2 years. But the question to ask yourself is it time to be invested or is it time to be out of the market? And my advice is very clear that number one, do not have 100% of your money in equities. But whatever is your equity allocation, it is time to be invested. I do not see an imminent big crash. Of course, the market when the move started was extremely narrow. So even in August, while the indices were down about 10% from the top, more than, I think, 80% of the stocks were down more than 20%. So that now more and more stocks have been participating. So now it's only about, I think, 20 or 25% stocks that are down more than 30%. So that's been broadening. Of course, there are like ups and downs every day. Advanced declines might not show that, but overall, the market has broadened from what it was 2-3 months ago also.
Okay. Ma'am, you've always advised people to remain invested in the market for whatever equity allocation they have depending upon their requirements in the future. At this point of time, whatever equity that people have within that asset allocation, do you think large caps have a better sense ahead on the long side? Mids and smalls haven't moved as much in the last 1 month or so, but large caps, stocks that we've practically grown up with, Reliance, Bharti, State Bank of India in particular, have given fairly strong and robust returns over the last 5 weeks or so.
There's no point looking at very short-term moves, but yes, that to 2024 during the bull run, the small caps and micro caps did very well, and I was warning that will not last forever, because that never lasts forever, and not a lot of stocks so which do well in that kind of bull run actually just never come back. So the next time there's a bull run in small caps, it's not the same old stocks that go up. But of course, you have to look at sectors, you have to look at companies. It cannot be that large caps in general are the only place to be. But that is the reason why what I was saying that earlier, that the indices, the fall was not that much as the blood in the markets, because the individual stocks had fallen much more, which was not getting captured by the indices, and which is because of the market cap weighted nature of the indices, which means that the large caps have been outperforming. And this, I'm not just talking 1 month, but I'm saying in the entire move from the bottom, it has been the large caps which have done well, which is why the indexes on the whole have done better than aggregation of individual stocks. So to that extent, but then as I said, in the bull run also, the large caps had not run up as much.
Yes. I think the small and the mids have run up so far ahead that even a modest bounce in large caps makes us feel that perhaps better days are ahead. Overall, at this point of time, Devina ji, in your global portfolio, what is the allocation to equity? And in that space, how much is Indian equity? So, two subsets.
Yeah, so Indian equities are never that high because India is only 5% of the world. And normally we have 75 to 80% of our global portfolios in equity. So right now I think it might be a little below 80%. But we have been underweight US all of this year. So from January onwards, while obviously US is still the largest weight, we have been underweight US, we have been overweight Europe, China, we were overweight from 24 itself. India, we would be slightly more than the benchmark weight, not very significantly more.
Okay. And where is this money in India parked?
So, on the global portfolios, we can only buy the indexes. So, there we cannot buy individual stocks because we're not a registered FII in our global fund. But in India, if I look at our India PMS or even our small case allocation, from beginning of 24 onwards itself, we were overweight auto components and we were overweight pharma and healthcare. So that still continues. In 25, where we have added and where we have become overweight over a period have been FMCG. Banks, we are not overweight, but we are holding more than we usually do. So this year we have added banks because I think banks, after a very long period of underperformance, so coming out of that. So if you look at the 5 years prior to 2025, so if I look at 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, barring 2022, which was the last time we were market weight banks, all other 4 years, Bank Nifty has hugely underperformed the Nifty every single year. So, it's every few years that changes a bit. So, even though I might have some concerns on retail credit and all that, it is just like the giant wheel. At some point, it comes back. So, while we, as I said, we are not overweight banks, but we hold more than we used to. Others have been more stock
Okay.
specific calls, like some in chemicals and some in other sectors and so on.
Acha. Now let's come back to banks and let's just sort of, with the benefit of hindsight, see 4 or 5 strong tailwinds that have emerged on the macro space in India. We've had a GST cut. We've had a strong bout of liquidity being injected by the RBI. There have been rate cuts galore, both on the IT side, the income tax side, as also in terms of the interest rates. With these 4 tailwinds in mind, Devinaji, are you hopeful that maybe in the next 6 months or so, you will see a fresh, decent high on the Nifty?
So my view, Shell, had been for a while, and if I go back to my interviews a quarter ago, it was that consumption is picking up. In fact, consumption had been picking up for a while. Consumption low, many people do not realize the low in growth in personal consumption in the GDP was in 23-24, at which point I think it was a 21-year low. And at that point, I think I was the only one talking about it because the market was still doing well. When the market started correcting in September 24, that's when, everybody discovered consumption slowdown, but consumption had already started to accelerate then. So consumption has been going up. That's one positive. GDP growth has been good, though, the nominal growth not that great and the composition not that great, but still. The other big positive has been inflation. Inflation coming down in certain foodstuffs, the prices have come down, not just the inflation rate, which rarely happens. So that means that in the household budget, there is more room to buy other products. Because when food inflation is very high, often what happens is that even things like soap and shampoo get cut out. So that was my call, that consumption will pick up with these positives. And so my call was that in the second quarter, that's July to September, you would see earnings pick up. But then this GST thing happened, which, while it is a positive, it caused a disruption in the second quarter because some consumers postponed purchases. As far as companies were concerned, they had to figure out what to do with pipeline inventory. So basically, there was a hiccup, which meant that the full impact of all the positives would not get captured in Q2, which is what you're seeing now. And therefore, some of the earnings uptick will get captured in the third quarter. So that's the October to December quarter where we are. So that's a positive. In terms of valuation, See, index level valuations make little sense because the index composition over the years has changed so much. 25 years ago, there were no banks. Now, banks and financials are the highest component. At one point, the whole Sensex and Nifty were full of PSUs, and then people forgot that PSUs are around. But if you
Yes.
look at sectoral PEs for almost every industry are not at their highs. In many cases, they are even somewhat below the average for the last decade or so. So the valuations on those parameters don't look very stretched, and these are with not so great earnings. We will see some uptick in earnings in the in the quarters coming again. So I think overall the prospects are not bad, and as I said, I don't see any reason for a big crash to happen.
Okay, so let me just try and find out the positives from your side. Sectoral PEs are not high. Earnings is an upcycle. We have 4 or 5 major tailwinds. So for fund managers like you, this is a good time for picking stocks for say 2 years, 2.5 years out, right?
Yeah, I mean we are fully invested, but then we have been fully invested more or less most of the time because this is the data I may have given in one of the earlier interviews that in the 40 odd years since Sensex came into existence, if you had missed out on the 10 best days, you would miss out on two-thirds of the return. So let's say your 100 rupees becomes 75,000 rupees. If you miss out on 10 best days, it goes down to 25,000. And normally these very sharp up move days don't come in the middle of a bull run. They come when there is fear, there's anxiety, where people are saying, should I be invested? Should I stop my SIP? And so on and so forth. So it is, if at all you have to think of, booking something or pausing in your SIP, it should be periods like the first 9 months of 2024 when I had not just retail investors but even family offices coming and telling me that my expectations are not unrealistic. I'll be happy with a 35% compounding. And you have to tell them that is unrealistic. But at that time, money making appeared so very easy that people told me, why be conservative? Why are you not aggressive? We want to take high risk and get high returns. I said, with high risk, high returns are not guaranteed. Only high losses are guaranteed.
With the benefit of hindsight, what is clear over the last 3 decades is your own customer and your own interactions with a lot of people will tell you when the markets have peaked and when they have bottomed.
Right. I mean, oftentimes, yes. I mean, sentiment is a contraindicator. This all research studies have shown.
Yes.
And not just in India and the US, but Portugal, Brazil, everywhere where it has been done, it is the same. When the people are extremely happy and buoyant, the next period returns are below normal, as happened in the last summer. And when people are fearful, thinking things are not looking so good, the next period returns are above normal.
Okay, now let's touch upon another space in the market that has done phenomenally well, again very strong tailwinds, which is the PSU banking sector. For the last 25 years, we've always treated PSUs as a trading basket. जब बहुत सस्ते हों तो खरीद लो, जब ठीक ठाक रेट आए तो बेच दो. What is your gut feel about the PSU banking sector at this point of time? I think over the last 25 years, it's the first time where PSU credit growth is exceeding private banking credit growth. Do you think there is some kind of a intangible or invisible shift that has happened in the Indian banking space?
I mean, in our banking portfolio, we are also overweight PSU banks compared to private banks. So that's where we added earlier in the year was the PSU banks. And yes, you're right, not just on growth, even on credit quality, the PSU banks are mostly doing pretty well. So so I think that grand cleanup which happened over the years, it is now showing up. And I have never been the sort to write off the management of PSU companies of any kind, including banks. I mean, unlike many others in the market, I do not think that private sector has been great managers and the PSUs just don't have quality management. That's never been the case. And Yeah, so of course, I mean, you talked about it is coming back to your one of your earlier questions where you talked of rate cuts. So rate cut, just to remind viewers, normally if you look at the theory of it, the banks gain in margin terms when the rates go up because you reprice the loans immediately and the deposit rates go up only when the deposits are rolled over. So actually rate hikes are better for the margins than rate cuts. That's the theory of it. But this time RBI has, uh, uh, while not changing the rates in the last policy, they have loosened a lot of things for the banks, allowing them to do a number of things which they were not allowed to do earlier. So that could be some boost to the business side of banks.
I think ever since the new RBI governor took up this assignment in February, he's been on the front foot, to use a cricket analogy, and has aggressively added to liquidity in the market, and given that one extra rate cut that everybody was hoping would come. So I think that
Yeah, I
that
mean,
part of the
on the other
market is
hand, he
doing
has not cut
fairly well.
rates this time, even though the conditions were very benign. In the sense, inflation is down. It is at a almost historic low. The GDP growth was good, and I think part of the unsaid part of what he did not say in his policy statement was the currency part. That if you cut rates now,
Huh.
you will further put pressure on the rupee because the interest rate differential between India and the West, let us say India and the US, is almost at a all-time low. It's
It's
only in the
quite low.
2.5% depending on the day, compared to 5 to 7% it used to be. So again, theoretically, when interest rates are not much higher in India, it's difficult to attract money into India, and therefore there's pressure on the currency. It was not mentioned in the policy statement, but I'm sure that weighs into the whole decision on when to cut rates more.
Okay. Ma'am, this tariff issue that we have with the world's largest economy, do you think it's fully priced in Indian markets? I mean, what can get worse from here? That we don't have a trade deal. That is more or less accepted now. But even if we have a trade deal at current sanctioned rates, do you think the markets have accepted it and moved on?
More or less, also remember, Shell, that Indian listed space is not that exposed to the US. In the sense, we don't have much physical exports within in and the wherever we have physical exports, that's not a very significant segment of the listed market like gems and jewelry or garments. Pharma is one place where we do have, but pharma again, most of the large exporters from India have plants in the US that they have already done. Though I mean, in our pharma portfolio, we have more companies who are more in on the domestic side than the exports. But even looking at companies which have substantial exports to the US, most of them have plants there. So I don't think either way it will make a huge difference to the Indian listed space.
Okay.
Unless on IT comes up with something further than what he has already. Again, IT models are also mainly de-risked. I mean, if you look at most IT companies, they are none of them. I mean, I was looking at the top 10 H1B company list. There was only one Indian company in that list, which was TCS. Otherwise, you had the Amazon, the Googles, and the Metas of the world. So again, there's not that much that where there is potential damage, and if we get a better than expected deal, let us see. Maybe so it's very difficult to say what would happen. Sometimes people ask me that what will President Trump do. I said, like, does he even know what he will do? I should be able to guess what he will do. So
मैम उन्हें ही नहीं पता, हमें क्या पता?
sorry.
मैं कह रहा हूं उन्हें ही नहीं पता वो क्या करेंगे, तो हमें क्या पता चलेगा?
Exactly. What? How can I guess that?
Acha, in the statistical modeling that you do of the market, ma'am, what are the top 3 sectors that are coming on the long side, and what are the 3 sectors that you think are avoidable from the point of view of earnings, momentum, and market participation?
So I told you where we are overweight has been pharma, healthcare, auto components. We've added some more in auto, FMCG, and is also another sector where we are overweight. Banking, we are not overweight, but it's looking much better than it usually does. IT, probably now the underperformance phase is over. I would hazard that guess. Where we do not have much exposure are things like real estate, media, and things like that. And even some of the durable sectors also we would not have much. Partly also it's a risk call. It's not that real estate never does well, the real estate company, realty companies, but it's usually a volatile, risky space where we are a little diffident about taking exposure.
It's interesting that you mentioned that IT seems to have bottomed out. In the Indian portfolio at First Global, are there any representations from large cap IT?
Yes, we
Have you
do.
added
We
some?
are in IT. We would be market cap weighted, market weight, and benchmark weight, or maybe slightly more than that. You know, it's not a sector we are heavily overweight, but we've never been as negative on the IT sector as some other fund managers have been. I am of the view that Indian IT companies have pivoted their business model many times. I mean, there have been stories of kind of their demise at the time of Y2K, at the time of cloud, at the time of digitization, internet, all kinds of things, but they have managed to pivot, and as they're doing with AI also, uh, my kind of bugbear with them is something different, but it's not to do with their existing business models, which is to do with the fact that in spite of so much cash and in spite of access to trained manpower, they did nothing on R&D. And this is not something I'm saying today. This has been like at the back of my mind for the last 20 plus years, that so much cash, why have you not tried to move up the value chain into something other than the same old, same old?
I think Infosys raised money on the Nasdaq in 2001 to fund an acquisition. We are all waiting for that major acquisition to happen, and in the meantime,
I mean, you
the
actually
State
threw
Bank
out
of
the
India.
CEO who tried to get into AI. You actually threw out the
Yeah,
CEO who said that AI is the next thing
and
and we
it's
must be part of it.
the biggest beneficiary of that fundraising has been the State Bank of India branch in Bangalore, where that money rests in a fixed deposit. Acha, ma'am, is this AI boom that's happening across the world, especially in the US, Japanese markets, Taiwanese markets, China as well? Do you think it's on its last legs? We've seen the same thing happening in 2001, 1999, 2000, when the internet bubble was shaping up. How far are we in the bubble?
I mean, I have concerns, especially if you look at the US market, the move has been so very narrow. It has been basically a tech, and within that, also a very small handful of companies which have been carrying this whole move. And there are things in terms of new technology, which is that people think that new technology, everybody must go invest, let's go chase that mirage. But it's often a mirage because it is that how long does a technology take to succeed? Who will succeed, which particular technology, which company will succeed. I go back to, you were talking about that dot-com time. Like, for example, there was this whole thinking that if the internet, everybody in the world will use the internet, which actually has come to pass. But and therefore, if you invest in companies which are building the infrastructure for internet, you can't go wrong. And so this internet, as your viewers may or may not know, is carried across the world on these undersea cables. And there was a company called Global Crossing which laid many of these cables. The cables it laid are still in use, but the company went bankrupt more than 20 years ago. So it's not only whether the technology succeeds. will it make return on capital on the amount of money that's being invested? So if I go to AI, for example, I mean, currently all these companies in the AI race like Meta, Google, etc., are hiring individuals or hiring or acquiring very small companies for one or two individuals at $100 million, $500 million. They are setting up these huge data centers. Now, what is a data center? It's a lot of real estate. It's a lot of building and equipment, which is very fast depreciating. It requires a lot of energy. Are you going to make returns on that? So, for example, when schools and colleges shut down for their vacation, interestingly, the use of many of the AI models came down 60-70%. So they're being used by students for their assignments. So this is not a high-paying population. So with so much money going in, will you make any sensible return on investment is the question. And ultimately, even if a technology succeeds, and I give this example that in the 20th century, which were the two technologies which fundamentally transformed how human beings live? One is automobiles and the other is aviation. And both have been a graveyard of companies. They have been terrible places to invest in by and large, even though the technology succeeded to this extent. So that's always a hard call, that how long will it take, which company will succeed, which technology will succeed. Again, I mean, we think electric vehicles is some new thing. I mean, Reva cars were introduced in India almost 25 years back. So
Absolutely. And the beneficiary was Mahindra and Mahindra, not the gentleman who started it.
right. I mean, that's the thing, that you don't know who will succeed.
Yeah.
And that would be, instead of combustion engine, which exact technology will succeed? There is a question mark. China is doing something very different. China, about 5 years ago during COVID time, they had identified, I think, 8 high-tech areas, from neuroscience to biotech to semiconductors and artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and they put a huge amount of money behind it. And they have got the results. You look at the list of the top 10 market share companies in electric vehicles, and you will see the extent to which China dominates. China is in a different league altogether.
Ma'am, my final question is, a narrow focused one, only on the Indian market. Now, after 13 months of doing nothing, and with strong tailwinds and perhaps green shoots on the earnings side, are you sleeping easy on the India portfolio at First Global?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm fairly, as I said, I have never given an index target either in the new Samvat or in January, ever in my 30 years. And now I have a term for it, which is Daniel Kahneman's term of objective ignorance, that things which you not only don't know, but cannot know. So I'm not giving anything on that front. But yes, I mean, as I said, it's a time to be invested. I don't see huge risks. And generally speaking, you should, over a period of time, make sensible returns, which is what the whole point of this whole exercise is.
With that, we'll call it time, Devinaji. As usual, it's such an interesting conversation. More importantly, the weather both in Delhi and Lucknow is improving, minus the pollution. So it's time to revisit our favorite eating joints, and we look forward to a wonderful conversation there as well.
I just spent 5 days in Lucknow, wonderful 5 days, and yes, eating was a large part of it along with friends.
लखनऊ में और कीजिएगा क्या?
बात भी ठीक है. कच्चा देखा और
on that wonderful note, on that wonderful note, we'll call it time, Devinaji. The very best to you and your fund holders at First Global.
Thank you so much.